Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Crystal Couture, and this is the Be Purely Balanced podcast. I'm here today with Kate O'Donnell, and we are talking about Ayurveda. Kate is an author, lecturer, and senior yoga teacher. She's the author of the Everyday Ayurveda Cookbook and Everyday Ayurveda Cooking for a Calm, Clear Mind, 100 Sattvic Recipes. An Ayurvedic practitioner and Ashtanga yoga teacher, Kate is on faculty for Kripalu School of Ayurveda and Boston Ayurveda School. She travels to India annually for study and teaches internationally. An avid interest in the healing powers of food have inspired her to study and practice the ancient arts of Ayurveda and yoga for more than 20 years. She teaches trainings, cooking classes, seasonal cleanses, and retreats when she isn't practicing yoga, writing, or having a chai. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Crystal.
How are you today?
Good. Getting used to the weather.
Yeah, we're approaching fall here in New England.
Yes.
So, of course, there are seasonal components to many of the ancient styles of healing, and I'm sure they fall into Ayurveda as well.
Yeah, definitely. My first book it's divided into recipes for the seasons.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. People sort of get the book and then cook their way through a year using seasonal foods. And in Ayurveda, there's a lot of use of spices that sort of change throughout the year to balance the qualities of the environment as we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we chat? I'm like so in love with the idea of cooking with the seasons, staying healthy with the seasons. And, my background in Chinese medicine makes me very interested in this. So I'd love to chat more about it. But let's just talk first about what is Ayurveda?
So Ayurveda is India's indigenous modality. It's the oldest continually practiced system of medicine in the world, as far as we know. And it's the cool thing about it is that the classical texts are still applicable today. So like the texts talk about food, it talks about the seasons and the qualities of the seasons, like whether it's hot out or whether it's cold out, and the things that you would do throughout a day, the things that you would eat. It's ideal to shift through the seasons so that we help the body adjust to the changes that are happening in our external world, which is really fun for New Englanders because we do have these sort of drastic changes. And I grew up in New England. I still live in New England most of the time. So that's, it's really fun to do the seasonal eating thing here. But Ayurveda is a 5-element system, like similar to Chinese medicine in that way, that we understand the body as a unique, each individual has a unique constitution made up of the 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. So like if you had more earth, you'd be heavier. Like your bones would be thicker. You'd actually weigh more. You'd have more tissue. You'd be the kind of person who like looks at a muffin and gains weight, and has a hard time losing it. Right. Whereas somebody who has like more air or more space element in their constitution their bones would be very fine. They would be very light and kind of like maybe even a little spacey, if they don't take care. And they're the kind of people who like lose weight and can eat anything they want, and it's like they can't gain weight and keep the weight on. So people have these differing kind of qualities that are acting in their bodies. Some people are hot, some people are cold, some people are overly moist, there's like congestion and mucus. Other people are dry. They're having like dry scalp, dry skin. So understanding like how these elements are manifesting in our bodies is sort of like step number 1, knowing how to recognize them. And then Ayurveda always introduces opposite qualities to create balance.
Okay.
So it's like if you're dry, we're going to say, okay, let's add more oils to your diet.
Right.
Whereas if you're heavy, I'd say, no, don't do that.
Right.
So there is this really individual component that I find to be very important aspects. Like these days where Americans especially, sort of jump on a fad wagon.
Yes.
And the question people, I'm sure in your practice, the questions that people always say, like, is dairy good? Is dairy bad? Is the ketogenic diet good? Is the ketogenic diet bad? And it's like the answer in Ayurveda is always, it depends.
Right.
Depends on the individual's elemental constitution. It depends on the time of year. It depends on stress levels, sleep, whether or not you have a family to take care of. There's all these aspects to holistic medicine that it's like, it seems obvious to me, I've been studying these systems since I was a teenager. It's like, it's really all I know in a way. So of course it seems obvious to me, but when I speak to people with more of a Western background, the idea of taking into account aspects of people's diet and people's lifestyle and the seasonal changes, how old they are, all of those things actually are a part of the overall narrative of how a person got to where they are now and how we're going to get them back to a place of balance.
Exactly. This is a great way to describe Ayurveda, but also just to get into the idea of holistic medicine and how deep it can go and how much we can get to know an individual through their habits, through their constitution, through the choices that they make, right? And how all of these contribute to their health. This is beautiful. So you focus a lot on nutrition as a component of Ayurveda. Are there other components to Ayurveda as well?
There certainly are. It's a really big system that takes so many things into account. However, imbalances in the body are understood to always begin in the digestive tract, because it is the juice of the food, basically, that goes into the body and nourishes the tissue and actually creates the tissue that makes up our bodies. So we are literally what we eat in that way.
Right.
So food is sort of the number one thing in Ayurvedic medicine, which I think is very cool because I love food and because we all have to eat it. So it's like this bonus that you get to manage your health through something you have to do every day anyway.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, why not? Why not make food medicine? Like, we have to eat.
Exactly. I love that. And there's so much just with intention, right? There's so much possibility of thinking of food as a medicinal support system for us. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you end up kind of like, you're moving in the direction with life with a capital L.
Right.
When you take in foods that are full prana or full of life force,
Yeah.
things that are created locally in your community, that came from the soil that you also walk on. You're eating food that came from that same part of the earth at the time of year that it's growing and freshest, and all those things just raise our vibration. And that is what the word sattva means, which we were just talking about before we started.
Yeah.
And so, while food is sort of the number one aspect in Ayurveda, I think the energetics of our universe are a big part of Ayurveda, and understanding whether our lifestyle, our diet, our choices, our associations are of a high vibration or not is actually essential to enjoying good health.
That's really powerful. Yeah. So you mentioned you started your relationship with Ayurveda and the principles of Ayurveda at a really young age. Tell us about your own journey and what that process was like and how you got from there to here.
That will give you the short form on that. But I went to UNH, so I was in your neck of the woods there. And I went to India in college, like sort of after my first year of college. I went to India and taught English there, and always wanted to go there since I was a little girl. something about
Mm.
like the color, I saw something on TV or something.
Wow.
So obviously it was a karma for me. It was like a predisposed kind of relationship that I had with India.
Yeah.
And I traveled all over the place. I was 19 when I went on that trip. I traveled all over the place and contracted a good deal of parasites, which it doesn't have to be that way, but I was enjoying all sorts of things I shouldn't have been enjoying while I was over there. And I found an Ayurvedic doctor to help me. And it wasn't like I sought him out or anything. I was practicing yoga at the time. It was my Ashtanga yoga teacher's doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody in the community said, you should go to our teacher's doctor. And I did. And he took me through what's called a panchakarma, which is a deep tissue cleansing process that happens in a residential center.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through this sort of month-long process, the doctor and a team of nurses kind of like taking care of me. And I experienced a union with a godlike principle through that practice. And I sort of emerged, and there was truly life before and life after.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like it changed me on a cellular level. That also changed my pathway through this life. And things were never, there was like no turning back, from understanding something about this universe that I didn't understand before. And it was an experiential process. It wasn't something I learned like through reading or, it was actually a cellular transmission that happened, and it came from the Ayurveda. So I started like reading everything I could about this Ayurveda, like what is this, and it was a part of my lifestyle for a decade following that, just the things I learned from that doctor. And I was always going back and forth to India studying Ashtanga yoga in Mysore. And somewhere along the way, one of my yoga students in Boston approached me and asked me, will I go learn more about Ayurveda and come back and teach it to them? And like all these bells went off in my head, and I was like, ding, 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 oh my God, that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I made a formal study of Ayurveda and like at an Ayurveda school in the United States. And I started teaching pretty quickly, and there was just this huge call for it. I think people were really feeling frustrated with the kind of attention they were getting from Western medicine. I don't think they felt heard.
Yeah.
And Boston's, the medical community there is like full force with the hospitals.
Big,
and so all the doctors there are super busy. And there's also a culture of people going to the doctor a lot for everything and having these expectations. And so a lot of people were coming to me unhappy with the results or the process that they were getting from their Western medical communities. And that was really interesting to me to see that. And the other thing that I saw was that people did not prepare their own food. They weren't interested in it, or they didn't know how, or they were intimidated by it.
Right.
And that was how the cookbooks came into being, was through working with clients and realizing like, oh, we got to take it right back to like, how do you make kale?
Right. The basics.
Yes. The basics of nourishing ourselves. And that is a huge aspect of Ayurveda, and something that I learned early on, from that experience in India when I was 19.
Wow. What an interesting journey, and such a profound experience. I love this note of before and after, life before and life after. That's pretty amazing. And that's really, really immersive for what you experienced.
Yeah.
So this transmission, this cellular transmission that you noted that happened through the Ayurveda, through this process that you were receiving, is that part of what you're transmitting with the sessions that you're doing now, the writing that you're doing now? Like, is that spark, that sort of initial spark, that initial cellular transmission? Is that living through all of the work that you're sharing?
That's a great question, Crystal. I love that question. I think I think that's the joy of sharing a traditional medicine.
Yeah.
Is that it's something that has been passed down,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that spark, that transmission that passes from individual to individual. That's like the living spirit of Ayurveda or of yoga or of Oriental medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Ayurvidya, is the spirit of Ayurveda, which it's definitely my interest in as a teacher and as a practitioner, is to inspire people to go to that depth in themselves, where they can experience that spark of the original medicine, which is really about feeling okay in this body, and okay as a working member in the life stream of this universe. And it's a thing that it's not like, oh, you get there and then you're never trying again. It's this process that's ongoing all the time.
This is amazing. I'm just going to repeat this because I love how you said it. Once again, a working member in the life stream of the universe. This is really profound, because I think so often we get stuck in the physical world that we sort of forget, and the very present physical world, the day to day. And these ancient medicines are teaching us and reminding us about something greater and that universal power. So I'm curious how that translates with Ayurveda. We've touched on it a bit, but if you have more detail that you'd like to share, I'd love to go to that place.
Mm-hmm. The other aspect of like what my second cookbook is focusing on is the mind, and that goes back to Vedic philosophy, which is the body of knowledge, of seeking, of human trial and error that underlies yoga as well as Ayurveda. And it's that what I notice is that the study of yoga and Ayurveda changes the way that the mind works. So it changes the way that we order our universe and the way that we understand ourselves and our place in it. And what I feel in a sort of an embodied way is an expansion that happens, and it's truly an expansion of understanding oneself as a part of a whole. Yeah. And it is something that if we don't seek it consistently, it can get quite clouded over. That's what the second book is about, sort of cultivating sattva, cultivating clarity of mind. And it's from that place where we are able to connect to the something greater. Yeah. And to truly feel the self and the body as a vehicle that's made of the 5 elements, and that is enlivened by life energy. And it's the same 5 elements and the same life energy that is present in the squirrel, in the tree, and in the carrot that I'm eating. And if I don't continuously call myself back to an understanding of the universe in that way, I will forget that. And I've been at this for 20 years. I'm still forgetting. Right. So I think that daily practice is actually a really important part of reaching those depths of the kind of understanding of the human reality that's present in these traditional systems. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. I've been in practice for a while myself, and I would say the same thing. There are things that I forget. They slip on a regular basis, even though I teach them, even though I work with them. So it's a commitment to be in that space and to be in the lifestyle of
awareness and presence and consciousness. And that's what, you're right, these ancient modalities are offering to us. And I think there's a bit of a surge. Perhaps it's disappointment with the Western medical system. Perhaps it's a number of factors, but it seems like there's quite a surge that people are coming back for these traditional healings. And I think it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It is. I think it's kind of what we need.
Yeah.
People need to consider that what we eat and how we live our lives and what we turn our attention to on a regular basis are affecting our health.
Right. Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
So I'd love to now, if we can, I'd love to just get into a little bit, since we are really kind of getting out of that late summer season and sort of jumping into fall pretty quickly this year here in New England. I'd love to get any ideas that you might have for people about sort of living through, the modules of Ayurveda seasonally.
Well, right now we're moving from hot and moist to cold and dry. And that shift really calls for a move from like raw food to cooked food, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and from things like lettuces and melons to things like sweet potatoes and other root vegetables like beets and carrots.
Yeah.
Getting into the legumes like the lentils and the mung beans. Small beans at this time of year are really great. They digest easily. The large beans have more air element in them, which can cause wind. Which at the change of season, that sort of thing can happen.
Yeah.
The change of season is when people are most likely to kind of get sick.
Exactly.
In Ayurveda, I'm sure you notice it in your practice, but people, it's the shift that sort of upturns the body. So
yes.
We can sort of, if people can just move, start to put the salads down and move more towards soups and stir fries, cooked vegetables, steamed vegetables, rice and beans, that kind of stuff, is it's going to assist the body in the shift. So there's less of a difficulty. And that way, if the body is fighting some little bugs or whatnot, which I think that a lot comes from our lifestyle, which is that like school starts. So all of a sudden everybody's like in these little incubators together, like coughing, sneezing, and whatnot.
Yes.
But people can also this time of year can increase the warming spices a little bit as the weather drops. So using like fresh ginger is great, and drinking ginger tea. Just really simple, something like cooking with fresh ginger and drinking ginger tea throughout the day can keep you from getting sick and can help your body like just go through the shift. So it's a good practice, like sometime in late September or early October, to kind of like launch like a ginger movement in the household. That goes on for a week or so. And ginger's kind of like a panacea in Ayurveda. It's not super potent, but it's good for so many things. It doesn't cause imbalances in most cases unless you're like super overheated and you're overdoing the ginger.
Right.
But it's something just really simple, like anybody can get ginger tea bags going on and start cooking with ginger and making the soups kind of a little bit like on the spicy side. And once we're consistently getting cold weather, that will feel great, and the body will just rejoice in that simplicity.
Yeah, I love that. We have a share in a local CSA. And so it's really interesting because we still are getting some of these summer type vegetables, right? So there's still like zucchini that's coming in, and then there's beets, and there's these really robust bunches of kale. So today when I came home, my husband had made this kind of mixed dish, almost like a stew, right? That had beets and it also had the zucchini in it. And as I was eating it, I thought, oh my gosh, how perfect is it that we're talking to Kate today? Because it's like the seasonal shift, and I knew we were going to be talking about Ayurveda and food because that's your vibe. And I just
Yeah.
thought, oh, this is the perfect meal.
Yeah. Stews are great. Stew
Yeah.
is the Ayurvedic food, like the one pot meal.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to do this time of year. So your husband is right on with that.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of, I want to talk about something that we touched on earlier in our conversation, and it's about this idea of simplicity, right? So I believe in Ayurvedic medicine, as you just mentioned, this one pot stew. It doesn't have to be these complex dishes. You don't have to spend tons and tons of time preparing different parts of meals, right?
Right. It would actually be contraindicated to create complicated meals like that.
Yeah.
The idea is that a simple diet is easier to digest. And it's in that way, it's back to like our sort of esoteric conversations. It seems you and I seem to go in that direction together, which is awesome. But that experience of connection with the universe actually begins with good digestion. Because when you put the zucchinis and the beets from the earth into the body and they digest nicely and then sort of like harmoniously, and they are absorbed by the body, assimilated into the creation of tissues of the body, like how do you not feel harmonious with the universe in that experience?
Right,
So
right.
it's when we mix a bunch of different stuff that came from a bunch of different environments or different seasons. Something's raw, something's cooked, something's hot, something's cold. And it's all going on in the same meal. That's when we can start to get a little disharmony in the digestion. Like maybe the winds are up, so we're burping or we're farting or bloating. Or maybe
Mm,
there's some fire going on or some sourness, so things can feel kind of like a little acid digestion is there.
right.
So it's having those kind of disharmonious experiences after we eat food or while we're eating food that it disrupts that sort of continuous exchange of energy with the cosmos.
Mm,
Yeah, so
yeah,
to me, eating simple food is a spiritual act. It is a part of the sadhana or the spiritual practice.
yeah.
I love
I,
that.
I love that. Same words. I love that so much. So, for people at home, you've given some great sort of ideas for types of foods and how to eat in the fall. But in general, just what can we do to simplify? Because it's very easy to get overwhelmed, right? And my whole life I've been vegetarian or vegan, and I look at people and they're making these meals for their kids and doing these things, and there's different parts, there's all this stuff, and it's quick food, right? And it's processed, and I think, golly, I could have made a vegetable soup in less time, right? So how can people simplify? How can we get into this connection with local, when possible, produce, get into this space where we're really connecting to the food, using the food, and not taking all day to prepare the food?
Yeah. Well, that was like my goal. That was what I set out to do when I wrote the Everyday Ayurveda Cookbook. The idea is that I wanted to create recipes that people could use every day. Like
Yeah.
seriously, you can make a little food every day.
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk about sort of time-saving tricks like soaking a grain overnight, like quinoa, for example. And then when you get
Yes.
up in the morning, and you're home for a half an hour at least, hopefully longer, and you're moving around and you're doing your hair or whatever's going on. So you're boiling the quinoa, while that's happening. And
Right.
then there it is. You sit down and you eat it. And then you put some in a glass Tupperware and you bring that, to go with your lunch. And then when you come home, you might have a little bit with some soup or some stew, that is going to be your dinner. So it's
Yeah.
like there's these sort of like life hack tricks you can do like that.
Hmm.
And what I really wanted to do was actually teach people how to cook simply with the books. So most of the recipes contain like 4 or 5 ingredients.
Mm.
And like my hope is that people can cook from the book for a period of time and then not need it anymore.
Yeah.
And like know like how to cook simply. And I did learn that from Ayurveda, that you take some ghee and you saute some spices in it. You've soaked your legume and your grain. That doesn't take long, right? Like I
Right.
soaked it, rinsed it. That took like 3 minutes. So
Yeah.
that's soaked. I saute the spices so I get my good oils and I get my sort of the medicinal potency of the
Yeah.
spices and the flavors, of course. And I put it all together. I turn it on. I add some chopped vegetables, put the top on, simmer it. And I'm doing something else while I'm simmering. I'm unpacking my lunch bag from the day, or like feeding the pets or cleaning something.
Right.
And it's like this. I think a lot of people think that cooking is like you get this cookbook that's got this like double-page spread, and that's one recipe, and you're going to completely dork out over that. You're going to go to the store and you have to buy this and that and the other thing. And so in a lot of people's worlds, cooking is like this gourmet experience, which is not how I am. It's never how I've been. It's a very practical thing in our house. Like we need to eat food. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
So I do think, not to be all self-promotional, but I do think that checking out my first cookbook is a great way for people to like get a handle on like quick cooking that's nourishing and simple and will digest well. And once you get the hang of it, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think just the reassurance for people, is seeing people that say, hey, this can be really simple. This can be a natural process. I just want to get a feel from you also on local foods, because I understand that's a big part of Ayurveda. So if you want to just touch on that quickly.
Yeah, that's, a lot of that is in relationship to where people live. There are certain things that I eat that maybe didn't grow here, like my lentils, because I'm also a vegetarian. So it's like, in Maine, it would be easier to be a meat eater for sure.
Right.
So I do have to source out some of my ingredients, but, oats grow up here, edamame grows up here. And I just think the thing about seasonal eating is just go to the farmer's market. You don't have to like wonder what's local in your community if you go and just see what's there. And I'm not a farmer, sadly, or a gardener. Like I've actually learned about what's seasonal by poking around the farmer's market. And it's a practice that I kind of push myself to go at least once a week and like see, oh my God, the zucchinis are gone. Oh,
Yeah.
they're harvesting the beets. No way. And over a couple of years, it's like I see what that is, what the season is,
Right.
and what grows here and what doesn't grow here. Because if it doesn't grow here, it's not going to be available
Right.
at that
Right.
market, And then for a lot of my other things, like condiments and whatnot, like I'll buy what I can there, and then that's where I kind of go off the beaten path, where I am not like such a purist, because that in itself, and this is something I've learned from Ayurveda, is that being a purist about your diet, it can create mental stress and tension around food that then manifests in the digestive organs. While we're eating and causes that disharmony in the digestive process. So I think that like eating locally is super fun, and you can go as far with it as you can go. And then there might be other things that like you need to have in your diet or you need in your flavor profile, and you just kind of have to, do your best to get a quality product. But like I think people would be shocked sometimes at what they find in my diet. Picture me this purist, because I read books. But it's like, I can eat these other weird things, like Halloween, I love a peanut butter cup, and like I can eat that and it's not going to throw me for a loop.
Right.
Because my body's strong,
Right. Exactly.
So we want to create that strong body and that good immune system and that good Agni, or digestive fire is what we call it, Agni. And to have that going is a lot less stress and a lot less tension,
Yeah.
around the protocols of like eating seasonally and like eating simply. And I think it's important to blow it all out of the water sometimes and trust that you're strong enough to enjoy that.
Right, right. I like the idea too of sort of allowing the foods to speak to you, right? So you're kind of like, you do your farmer's market thing, you're eating local, Halloween comes, as you said, and like where you're at, right? You know that your body's strong. So therefore, you know that you're not going to be thrown completely off kilter by eating something that is process. But again, it's something. It's not, you're not going off the wagon and eating and eating and eating and eating all of these things, right? All of these processed foods. Rather, it's just a treat or just speaking to you in a particular moment, and it's going to serve you in that moment. It's going to give you something. It's going to nourish you in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've learned a lot of that the hard way. Were Halloweens where I did overeat the peanut butter cups.
Who hasn't, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's important for listeners to know that we all go through that process.
And if we don't, if we don't, right, then how are we going to learn?
Yeah, and you learn like what your body can tolerate, what's appropriate, through experiment. Mm-hmm. So I like to encourage my readers and my clients to be mad scientists, and like be free about experimentation and feeling for, the actual cravings of the body. And because once we get to a state of balance, our cravings will reflect things that will perpetuate balance.
Yeah, that's really excellent. So what would you say is the greatest gift that Ayurveda has given to you?
I would say the feeling of being okay with how I am. It's given me a language in which to understand my system, my body, my mind, the energies that pull upon both the body and the mind, and with that comes an acceptance. So it's that acceptance, I think, that is the gift, and that is what I see Ayurveda creating for people all over the place.
Yeah, that's powerful. This modality sounds like an extremely powerful modality. My experience with Ayurveda is pretty limited, and mostly I was introduced to it through body work. So I've experienced that aspect of it, but not so much the food aspect aside from my own reading. So this is really insightful. And I think for people, it's one of those things, like you say, right? The purist mentality can be really toxic to us sometimes. So it comes down to, how do things resonate at what time that you're in your life, right? If in this present moment, this is something that's really resonating with you and you can really connect to it and it's going to serve you to, as you said over and over, raise your vibration, then it's absolutely the direction to go. And for people not to hesitate to go there, try it.
Yeah. Like you can trust yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to share today before we close?
I just would like to thank people for listening. There are a lot of podcasts out there, and attention that's where all the energy is. So I thank people for sharing their energy in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do so? What's the easiest way?
I would say to contact me through my website, which is www.kateodonnell.yoga.
Love that. And your website is absolutely stunning. For any of our listeners that are looking for the visual appeal, there's so much of that on Kate's website. So, well, thank you so much, Kate. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Crystal. It's great to meet you.